corruption, it's perversion masquerading under the guise of renewal.
Today, they've degenerated into a social club for bored millionaires and celebrities who use its meetings as an excuse to indulge their jaded sexual appetites.
Mom, do you really want to go and live in that hotel for the winter?
Sure I do. It'll be lots of fun.
What have you done to it? What have you done to its eyes?
He has his father's eyes.
Welcome back, Uncensored Cinephiles fans. We're sorry for the hiatus. It's just been a long, very busy while for us, and we're now married. So
yes.
That's happened since our last podcast together. So
yes, yeah.
There'll be many more podcasts to come. Don't worry, everybody. So hope you missed us, and hope you're ready for Nefarious.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited to discuss this because I came across the movie by listening to the Hollywood in Toto podcast, which is a podcast by a conservative film critic, believe it or not, called Christian Toto.
Mm-hmm.
And he had on, I believe, I can't remember whether it was one of the actors in the movie or one of the filmmakers or the writers. But he had somebody on to the podcast, and that's how I learned about the movie, and I was like intrigued by it. And I think I've seen, I can't remember, some clips from Twitter became a bit viral.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is interesting. This is an interesting movie, and it's not normally one that I would have fallen, in like past my radar type of thing.
Yeah.
That it would have shown up on my radar.
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
I was intrigued to seek it out because, I don't know, like a spiritual reawakening or a spiritual awakening that I'm going through at the moment. So, I kind of felt like a film that I needed to see. So, yeah. It's like, and it generally was a well-crafted movie, and for a movie that I don't know, it looks like it had a relatively low budget. I don't know, like, didn't really have any like major big names attached to it or anything. It was like mostly set in one room, so for them to do such a good job is actually quite impressive. So.
Yeah. I mean, it probably wasn't a huge budget because it was all set basically in one part of one jail.
And that's what I like about movies that have a restrictive setting, and only like a couple of characters, is that really it's about like the acting and the dialogue and the story that drives the action along. So
yeah, I thought the guy who played the serial killer was like really good.
Yeah.
He was totally
Yeah.
crazy. Like, he just looked crazy. And, like, I thought he did a really good job when, like, going between the two different...
Yeah.
Like, when he spoke as the demon.
Right.
Right.
So, should we go, like, sort of briefly give, like, a synopsis for our subscribers or for the audience watching?
I guess, yeah. Yeah.
Would you like to do that?
Sure. So, the movie starts off with a psychiatrist
Yes.
in his office, and he's adjusting his diploma, right? And then he finishes writing something, probably about the serial killer that's in jail, right? It was probably his final diagnosis.
Right, yes, yeah.
And then he, like, has sort of, like, an Eliza Lamb type situation take place, where he goes in the elevator and then the next thing you know, he's committing suicide by jumping.
Yeah.
Right?
I think what's funny in that scene, it's obviously not a funny scene, but clearly the demon is like fucking with him, is like the his diploma in the frame keeps going like skewed, yeah.
It's messing with his pride.
It's such a British thing. It keeps going skew with, but it keeps going, you know, like tilted, and that's like it feels like that's what demons kind of do, is try like little things to sort of like make you crazy. It's like gaslighting sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the moment he jumps to his death, it goes back to normal.
Yeah, it pushed it back.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's like the first psychiatrist that has been sent to assess whether Edward, the
serial killer, is crazy or not. Right? Because basically the premise is, so then it goes to the prison, right? So you're introduced to the prison, and there's kind of like that like aerial shot where you're like zooming into the prison, similar to like in The Shining, where before you're introduced to the hotel, you're flying over it.
Yeah.
You know, like Prince of the Power of the Air over the thing you're looking at, like the demons infesting it like from above. So it's kind of interesting, like introduction to the prison, and then you go in, the guy is like going in, there's the protesters there because some people want the prisoner executed, other people don't, so like you see the divide in society type thing. And then the psychiatrist is brought in to the guy.
Yeah, so he's
right.
Dr. James Martin.
Dr. James Martin, yeah.
Yeah, who calls Jim, doesn't he?
Yeah. And they do like the normal prison thing to like get your mind into the idea that like he's like inside a prison, right? They're like, you know, hand over your cell phone and like search his car and like all these various things.
Yeah.
So.
And then he's led into this room, and he's told basically like you have until 4 p.m. To assess whether the prisoner is insane or whether he is, you know, fit to
for execution.
For execution. If he's deemed insane, he won't be executed.
Yeah.
And
so this guy's job, the main character, I guess you'd call him, his job is to determine if the serial killer is insane or not.
Whether he's a demon.
Well, that comes later.
Yeah.
Right? So they sit down, like, they introduce the serial killer, and you have, like, the typical setting where it's like, oh, you're trapped in here with the serial killer, right?
Yeah, it kind of, like, reminded me a little bit of, Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, a little bit. But I don't think Clarice was ever in the cage with him, was she?
No, not really. There was always that sort of, like, barrier between them.
Yeah. So anyways, like, they're in there, and the first thing the guy says to him is, I'm a demon. Right? That's, like, literally the first thing he says. And it goes on for a while, and he's like, oh, I don't believe you. We find out that the main character is an atheist, so he doesn't believe in any of this stuff. And they have a lot of dialogue about, like, how can you prove you're a demon? But, like, the demon basically from the very start of the conversation has, like, information about the psychiatrist that
it's very revealing.
A normal prisoner wouldn't have access to, right?
Probably just a coincidence, Jimmy.
Like, he knows that the psychiatrist, like...
basically pulled the plug on his mother.
Yeah, pulled the plug on his mother. He predicts that the psychiatrist is going to commit 3 murders.
Right.
By the end of that day.
Yeah.
And the first one was already committed before he walked
yes,
in.
which was, allowing his mother to have assisted suicide. And he, like, gets under his skin by saying it was about money, about inheritance and stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't think it really was about that. I think it was more that he didn't want his mother to suffer. But it's like he's deliberately, like, playing on his guilt and his conscience and trying to...
Oh, so you're giving the main character way too much credit.
I think he's actually a decent guy underneath it all. Like,
Oh, I don't.
Oh,
I think he's
okay.
a dirtbag.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah.
I mean, I did think the next murder that he is, commits, is the abortion.
So I think the
Which
demons picked the psychiatrist because they knew he was totally morally corrupt.
Do you realize I have the power to save you or condemn you?
What I understand, James, is you would have no power over me whatsoever if it hadn't already been given to you from below.
Right.
Right, and they knew that because, like, even though on the outside he tried to portray it as, like, oh, mercy for his mother, right? He got rid of her for the money and for the convenience.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, okay.
So the demons are like, oh, this guy's kind of perfect. He doesn't believe in God. He killed his own mother for money and convenience.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know. I just, like, try to see, like, maybe that's because I'm kind of, like, trying to see good in people. And, like, to me, I think it's not necessarily, like, the main character is corrupt because he's a bad person. I think it's the, like, society as he's the society that he exists in is morally corrupt.
Yeah.
And when that's, like, the case, like, how do you, like, live a righteous life when you're the only one doing it? Do you know what I mean? Like, when everybody else is partaking in it, it's, like, easy to get caught up in it all, right?
Yeah.
But we're sort of like, we've kind of jumped a little bit ahead, but there is for me what was an interesting moment was when the priest came in.
Oh yeah, the priest. They brought in a priest.
Right, because he was, like, trying to prove, like,
He wasn't a demon.
Yeah.
Right. He was like, oh, I'll bring in a priest, and the priest will tell me if you're a demon or not.
And the priest is like, oh, demons don't exist.
What do you want with me, son of God? Come here to torture me before the appointed time?
He claims he's a demon.
Carpenter sends you to gloat. Unfortunately for you, I'm not one that can be cast out so easily, though, am I?
Sanity always has been an issue here, hasn't it? Sadly, movies and TV have filled our heads with images that are largely metaphorical, aren't meant to be taken literally.
Yeah, so the priest comes in, and the priest is like, oh, demons aren't real. You know, the guy's just having an episode.
Yeah.
Personally, I've never met a demon. I've never been part of an exorcism, nor do I expect to be. Many of the things that bother us are just our own fears and disordered thoughts.
Right. So.
And I think that was interesting because the demon's reaction to that.
You don't consider demonic possession to be a possibility.
Our understanding has evolved beyond that.
Well, I appreciate you telling me that. I feel much better.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the character of the priest.
Yeah.
And whether you think that is kind of referencing, like, how the current pope seems to sort of, like, almost have turned his back on religion. Like, he doesn't even seem like Catholic. Do you know he's like pretty much done a lot of things.
He's like said the
lot.
same God is this God of Islam is the same God of Catholicism and stuff like that. He's like completely not following the Bible at all.
So these people who are like preaching, and there's a lot of them, there's like super preachers or whatever they're called, you know, like that. I can't remember that guy, but he's the meme, you know.
Joel Osteen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like all these people who say they're like
well, I mean, just go around and look at like all the churches that were flying the pride flag, and it's like, you know, the Bible says that's a sin. So, like, why would you be advertising that on your church?
Well,
it's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, I do think that there's obviously a place for people who are part of the LGBTQ community to belong to church. I mean, surely we can't just turn anyone away who...
No, that's not what I'm saying at all.
Well, okay.
Yeah. Sinners are everybody.
Right.
There's no one who isn't sinning.
No.
But you don't put, like, the sign of Satan on a Catholic church, do you? Because you want Satanists to enter your church, but you don't advertise to them by putting it on your church. You see what I'm saying? It's the same thing. Like,
don't think it's the same thing.
Well, I mean, it kind of is.
That's your point and view, and I don't agree with it.
That's okay. It doesn't really matter to the overall narrative of the movie.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I just think I was just like pointing out the
hypocrisy of the priest not believing in spiritual things.
I blame my baby brain for words I can't pronounce.
Well, I mean, my point is just like the priest doesn't actually like believe in the stuff the Bible's teaching. Right? And it's just like the modern churches these days that don't talk about these things.
Right.
Like, they don't talk about demonic possession. They don't talk about, like...
And why do you think that is? Is it because, like, I do think a lot of cases that I've been reading up of, it's clearly down to, like, the individual's, like, upbringing, and their sort of, like, you know, there's been abuse in the household of these people who've claimed that they've been possessed by demons. There's been, you know, clearly we don't know, you know, at the time they didn't know much about mental health issues. So I do think it's because what I'm trying to say is a concrete proof to prove that demonic possession is real, or...
Yeah, I would say there is. There's plenty of evidence over the thousands of years people have been documenting it, right?
I do think it's interesting when there's cases where they say, like, the people had superhuman strength, right? Yeah. And were so over the top with their behaviour that it wasn't, you can't really excuse it. Like I get it if people were acting
they know languages that they never could possibly know.
Yeah,
they are access to like information that other people don't have, things of that nature.
Yeah.
I've been in like haunted locations with what I would call like demonic entities present, and they're able to move like 70-pound, you know, latch doors, like, and slam them shut, and not just like one, like a whole row of them at once.
Yeah.
They can like scream right in your ear without being physically there, like just there, like as loud as you could possibly think, right in your ear. You know, they can appear as like black shadow type figures, if they will. They're definitely like a real thing, and there's been thousands upon thousands of documented cases. There's been so many that even the Vatican has had to admit that like demonic possession is real, and they actually do like exorcisms.
Yeah.
So
what I want to say is it nowadays is it the why aren't enough people sort of like talking about it? Like
because so many people are like they don't believe in anything religious at all these days.
Is it just a lack of, you know, religious belief that is holding people back? Like, because people
Mostly,
talk about people seem very open to the idea of ghosts.
Yeah,
right?
but that's easier to talk about because it's like a fun kind of subject, right?
Right.
No one's worried about ghosts like doing anything like demonic, right?
But
they don't
people talk
associate
about
it.
like you know, the like what I'm trying to say is like how many of these cases of ghosts that are like happen are actually really demons, and what
probably a large percentage of
Right.
them based on like my analysis of it, because most of them feed off of fear, and like the more fear that they drum up, the more crap they're able to do like on an investigation. And a lot of times they try to like lure you in by acting like something harmless, like a child or a relative or something, and that tricks people into like interacting with it more, which then they get scared while interacting with it because it's a scary thing to interact with, which then feeds into it more. Then they start introducing electronics and Ouija boards and things like that, which in turn makes it worse. Right. So
in order to
but I think most people, like I wrote about in The Lost Truth, like demons, and the demon in the movie talked about this, is like basically what they do is everybody has vices, right? So what they basically do is they feed off of your vices, and if say like you're into something bad that's a sin, they just like it's like imagine like something attached to you with strings, right? And every time you do something really negative, one of those strings gets stronger and they can feed more from it, right? And if you stop doing those negative things and like sever the ties from the demonic by like becoming Christian, like they can't gain from you anymore. Right? So the more they make you atheist, the more they make you do bad things, the more they gain from you.
Right. I think what was interesting in the movie was they tried to explain the sort of history and the background of angels and demons and fallen angels.
Yeah.
And
I thought they got way off the mark.
Yeah, I want you to sort of explain about this because I don't know much about the Bible and I'm still trying to learn.
So what the demon said in the movie was that demons were originally the angels of heaven, and now they're the demons that like are on earth, like possessing people and whatnot, right? And that's why they hated mankind, because mankind was made like after they fell as like a punishment for them, right? Like mankind was like created after the fall of the angels, according to the demon in the movie. But anyone that's read the Bible knows that's not what happened, because the angels...
The Bible doesn't start off with that.
Yeah, the angels, like, according to, like, the Bible and the Book of Enoch, the angels, like, corrupted mankind while in heaven, and then were kicked out of heaven for doing so. Right? According to, like, the Book of Enoch specifically, like, which is, like, a much more detailed and originally was a part of canon. Basically, according to that, what happened was the angels of heaven were, like, jealous that mankind could have children, because angels were spirit and they couldn't have, like, offspring. So what they did was they took form in order to have children of their own. Right? And that's, like, what led to the corruption of the world. And eventually there wasn't any, like, offspring left that were just pure humans except for Noah, which is why Noah was saved and the world was flooded. To wipe out the offspring of the fallen angels, which were the Nephilim or whatever, right? And then in the Book of Enoch it says those offspring, which were not human, necessarily. They were like half human hybrids.
They're kind of
when they died in the flood, they became spirits that roam on Earth, unable to take physical form as a punishment for like what they were, like, because they were doing like cannibalism and other things right at the end. That's why God had to flood the world. Everything they were doing was evil and wicked, right? That's explained in the Bible. Like, God was angry for having created mankind because they had been corrupted completely.
Well, really, surely that's not mankind's fault, though, that they...
No, he blamed it on the fallen angels, right?
Okay.
Specifically said they had corrupted mankind, right?
Okay.
So that's why
he
they were...
wasn't blaming mankind.
Yeah.
Really. Right, okay.
Right, and mankind actually was saved because the only, like, actual humans left were Noah's, like, immediate family, which why they were saved and all this, etc., right? So that's basically what I take from the Bibles and the Book of Enoch story, for having, like, the Bible itself as a source. So it's really weird that they, like, I mean, obviously I think maybe that most people don't know that stuff.
Right, okay, because like you say, it's been taken out of the Bible. And
the Catholic Church doesn't teach any of that.
Yeah, and how long ago did that section get taken out of?
I think it was like Council of Nicaea.
Right.
So like long time ago, right? But it is like, it does make sense when you read it.
It's really odd
in
that
context.
they like remove a whole book from the Bible. It seems a bit like,
even though it was then again found with the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah.
So
and
it's like, it was supposed to be with the rest of the teachings.
And they do reference the Nephilim, or is that what they call
the giants. They call them men of renown in the Bible.
Yeah, it's referenced in the story of Noah.
Of Genesis, it's in Genesis,
so it's kind of like, if you didn't know who those were, it doesn't make any sense.
No, you're like, giants? Why are there giants? It doesn't make any sense. You just kind of, like, it's one of those, like, you just kind of move on. And
you're like, oh, okay, that's a weird thing. But I think you made an interesting point that the demon, which is called Nefarious, he gives himself that name, he's possibly has made up that version of the, being a fallen angel and his, like, inception.
Well, demons lie.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
It's like he's trying... Right? Do you think he's, like, trying to get underneath the psychiatrist's skin? Because that's, like, giving him a very clinical psychiatrist type of answer.
Yeah, maybe.
He's, like, manipulating him.
Oh, absolutely. The demon manipulates the main character the entire film until he gets him to do exactly what he wanted him to do in the end anyways.
Yeah, I think I think the film is quite controversial in lots of ways. I kind of want to discuss some of these controversies that has received criticism from certain film critics, and I think a lot of the reviews that I've read have been very, like, harsh about the movie because of the stance it takes on certain political topics.
Like what? Let me guess.
So I think it has got that section about abortion and child sacrifice, which the demon compares abortion to the child sacrifice to, was it Moloch?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, like, interesting in a way that we've become very casual about abortion, and it's become like, just, you don't want something, we just discard it, and it takes away, like, the value of human life and creation. And I say this as somebody who is now pregnant, and we're expecting a baby soon.
Yeah.
And for me, that section of the film really, like, hit me harder than it would have done if I wasn't pregnant.
Yeah.
Because you're right, actually, about the character being a dirtbag, the main character.
Yeah. Because
he's coaxed his girlfriend into having that abortion.
Even though he's got plenty of money, a good
he
job.
Doesn't feel he's ready to be a father. Well, nobody is ready to be a father or a mother.
No, never. Yeah, of course.
There is never a perfect time for that to happen, and yeah, it's like any means to get things out of his life which are considered inconvenience he takes. Like, you said about the mother, and now he's doing it with the unwanted baby, and I can understand like how the film has divided people because of the sensitivity we have at the moment about abortion.
But I mean, it does literally draw the same, like, it's literally just the medical version of the Moloch statue. That's what abortion is. So like the comparison they're drawing, the reason people are so mad about it is because it's so accurate.
Right.
Like, I'm sorry, but like, it is what it is. I said it. It's just, there's no other way to describe it. That's what abortion is. It's Moloch sacrifice. It's just done with medical professionals.
I think that there's a bit too... I personally think that there needs to be more of an open debate between both sides about the impact of abortion and what it can do to actually, like, the female psychology and mental impact that it can have. And it shouldn't be something that is seen as like a celebration. I've seen like weird, awful things where women have posted like cakes to like gender reveal cakes, but it's like, oh, it's abortion, and stuff like this. And it's like, really shouldn't be something that we should be celebrating as a society. And the fact that we are kind of indicates how morally bankrupt we've become, because regardless of whether you believe in God or not, it's still life, and it's still something that we need to have happen in order to continue our species. But I did think it was that was a very strong point of the movie, and it's not often that I see movies actually
daring enough to make that point.
Right. And make that, like...
The movie was very conservative.
Yes, and you know what? It's like, sometimes it's like, you need to watch movies from both sides of the political spectrum and be able to have debates, and yes, there's some certain things that in the movie that, like, offended me because it made me question, like, where I stand, and made me realise that how I've changed as an individual, and that's uncomfortable, right? To sort of like be like, oh, I've actually changed as a person, and have to address that and be open about it, because it's like the need to fit in and conform is so strong, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like,
I mean, look, I was a Democrat in college too. I didn't believe in any of this stuff, and I was pro-abortion, like, because, back then I didn't know any of this stuff, right? So I like even dove into like the, paranormal research stuff, like investigating the stuff in person myself, because I thought it was all horse baloney, right? So I was like, oh, I'll go out and I'll prove this is total nonsense. Right. But after a couple of years of going to haunted locations and interacting with the stuff that you find in this movie Nefarious, it's real. Like, if you don't believe me, go do it yourself. Go get yourself some audio equipment, go do the scientific method, and go to a couple locations and tell me how it goes after a couple of years. If you still don't believe it's real, then I don't know, maybe you're just lucky.
I think what is interesting is, like, there's so many things that happen in the world that can't be just simply down to chance, or that can't be down to, like, random, aspects of life. It's just too designed in such a specific way. And I think, like, strange things that have happened to me, which, you know, people are quick to believe in, we're all living in simulation. We're quick to believe in multiverse theory, but why aren't we like able to accept that there's something higher who's created this Earth? Right.
Yeah.
I don't. You know, if you're able to believe in aliens and Bigfoot, then surely you're able to be open-minded to believe that there's someone who has. To say someone seems dismissive because it's not just anybody.
It's the carpenter who saved us.
Right. Yeah.
That was another one of those things in the movie that drove me crazy, right?
Right, yeah. And do you want to sort of like go into that? Sorry, I was just trying to be a bit like, I don't know where I was going with my thought, but I was trying to say like basically if you could be open to like, I don't know, past lives and reincarnation and
multiple universe theory and all these crazy
surely
ideas.
You need to be also open to the idea of
the donut-shaped Earth.
Donuts. Yeah, so you mentioned the demon in the movie Nefarious. He
won't call Jesus Christ Jesus Christ.
Yes, and I was like interested as to why. And
Carpenter sends you to gloat. Unfortunately for you, I'm not one that can be cast out so easily, though, am I?
Also, you said, he's not meant. You wouldn't refer to him as the carpenter because he wasn't a carpenter.
Yeah, so, but I think, alright, so the demon calls him the carpenter, right? Because he's trying to, like, as you said, kind of like...
Yeah, he's kind of be insulting and, like, dismissive.
Yeah.
And, like...
Instead of calling him, like...
Yeah, by his real name.
The Son of God.
He doesn't even call him that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like... He's like, the carpenter. But, like, we've now known...
Do you know what? When he said that reminded me of the band The Carpenters. And I was like, why is he talking about The Carpenters? I was like...
But, like, so, like, from historical research, a lot of people don't know this. People don't even think that Jesus was, like, real because they're so, like, just led down a wrong path of research, okay? There are, first off... first-hand accounts of Jesus Christ by historians who saw him firsthand, including Pontius Pilate, who wrote a letter to the emperor describing Jesus Christ in first person.
Right.
Are there any biblical descriptions of Jesus? The Nazarites were purer than snow, they were whiter than milk, they were more ruddy in body than rubies. If Jesus was a Nazarite, then how could he be dark-skinned? Are there any historical descriptions of Jesus? The Roman consul Lentulus wrote a letter to the emperor, and in it he describes the condemned man, Jesus of Nazareth, as having blue eyes and blonde hair. Pontius Pilate, a second witness in a letter to the emperor of the time, Tiberius Caesar, also describes Christ with golden colored hair.
Everyone who saw him in first person and wrote about what he looked like said he had blonde hair and blue eyes.
Right.
Okay? All of this crap about, he was Middle Eastern or Palestinian or whatever, this is all historically inaccurate. You can even go look at the Nazarenes, who were the people described as what Jesus came from, and they were all also described as being ethnically white. Now, why does this matter? Because people will claim that Jesus wasn't even a real person.
Right, so what?
When there's historical accounts describing exactly what he looked like.
Yeah.
Right? And they won't even look at those as it's like, look, these people existed. Pontius Pilate was a person. He did write this letter. You know, it's just crazy. So when we look at the historical evidence for what Jesus was, there was no trees in that part of Jerusalem.
Right.
So he probably wasn't a carpenter. Unless
if he was, then he wasn't earning a lot of money.
Unless he was not given credit for another miracle, right? Because he was just producing trees out of thin air, and no one even noticed.
Producing great chairs. And I'm like, where have you got the wood for that?
Yeah, so the historical context is he was likely a stonemason.
Right.
Right? And not a carpenter.
Mistranslation.
Yeah, it was a mistranslation. Right? So this is just... We thought this was funny, but, like, these are all things that they won't tell you in mainstream society.
Yeah.
Right? and aren't in the film. So this is like us adding it into this film, knowledge-wise.
I mean, to be fair though, like if the demon probably knows, like Jesus' real profession and that, but if he was to say, "Oh, the stonemason," to like the therapist, he wouldn't know.
No, I think they did that for the movie because no one watching the movie is gonna know who the stonemason is. They're gonna think he's talking about like a Freemason or something, right? It's like George Washington, what? So
yeah, I you know what? I think what I liked about the movie was the fact that they brought into they brought up the ancient religions, right?
Yeah.
And we're talking about the real ancient religions that are, practiced human sacrifice. And he even says, like, my real name hasn't been uttered for, like, 4,000 years or something. Like, it's a Phoenician name or something, which is interesting because my middle name is I'm named after a Phoenician goddess, which is a little bit worrying.
Uh-oh.
But what I just think that's really...
It's the Phoenician goddess of what again?
Of love.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely true.
Yeah. But I think people should really, like... I haven't obviously researched a lot, but from doing this, this podcast and... from, like I said, we've done The Witch and The Northman and even Rosemary's Baby, and they bring up ancient religions, and I find that very fascinating that we have all this recorded history of these religions and what people believed in until Christianity came along. And it's really disturbing stuff, and I can understand like why the Christians were persecuted for, when they first came out, because they were saying, stop this, basically, this is wrong, throwing babies into like fire pits and stuff. We really shouldn't be doing that. And this is like, I think people don't realize, like, this is what our like culture was, a few thousand years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
And do you think like the film kind of implies that we're as a society, we're falling back into that? I mean, we've mentioned about abortion, but it was like also talking about other things, like how there's a lack of belief, and then how selfish people come. So like people are out just to for themselves and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think spiritually the world is probably as bad as it's ever been. Right? And like they kind of hit on it in the movie where they're like, oh, the Roman times were so bad, but now there's 40 million slaves in the world, and 20 million of those are currently sex slaves. So there's literally more slavery in the world now than there was during the time of like America's slave trade.
I think it was interesting. Dima did pick up on like how hypocritical like celebrity culture is. Because they were like, you have these sports stars, earning this much money, wearing sneakers that are made by children.
Child slave labor.
Yeah, and it's like,
and they're mad that they're being discriminated against. Right, like LeBron James, for example.
Well, I do think like as a society we have lost our way in lots of regards, and I think we've become caught up in a lot of things, like which don't really matter. Like like you always say, like it's turned into a left versus right, and I get this is clearly a right-leaning movie, but I do think it is also trying to say more to that, and really we should, I mean, it never brings up like it implies that it's demons who are actually ones we should be fighting against, but
yeah, and that's true.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like, the spiritual world really does, like, you say whatever you want, but, like, it does exist. So, like, we can all ignore it collectively and fight with each other, or maybe we could start being like, you know, this world's pretty sick in a lot of ways. Maybe if we, you know, took the spiritual world a little bit more seriously before we go head plunging into things like artificial intelligence running the planet, when, like, that's, you know, to me, a very worrisome thing. Like, we won't get into that now, but, like, for instance, like, with all this, like, possession stuff in this movie, right, and, like, the Phoenician thing you were talking about,
Right.
if you watch, like, the movie Encounters of a Fourth Kind, right, the aliens are speaking in ancient Phoenician, and they are doing the exact same thing as demonic possession.
That's actually
Right.
a really good
If
very
you
underrated
watch that movie and you watch it from the perspective of none of these people are being abducted by aliens, they're all being possessed by demons, and watch that movie from that perspective, you'll be blown away by how accurate
Right.
that is.
And I just remembered that movie. There was like a part of that film where there's owls that are featured.
Yeah,
and
owls, the Bohemian Grove, like all those connections to owls.
Before about like birds and symbolism and owls are another.
And what's the statue at Bohemian Grove? It's a statue to what?
A giant owl.
Moloch.
Yeah.
What was the temple on Epstein's Island to? It was a temple to Moloch, Moloch,
Right.
which is the thing that
Yeah.
the demon talked about in the abortion scene, right?
Yeah. I think we've picked up on some really interesting stuff, and I hope, like,
And just one last
Yes.
thing, because of the Carpenter thing we were talking about. So, like, a guy who was interviewed on Coast to Coast AM did a study of 10,000 alien abductions. And what he came away with was that these were all actually demonic possessions. And the reason he came to that conclusion was because in the cases where people were having these abductions, the abductions would continue until they called out the name of Jesus Christ. As soon as they called out the name of Jesus Christ, the alien abduction encounter would come to an immediate end. And they would wake up in their bed totally fine.
That's
right?
interesting.
So, like, he concluded that all of these things, it wasn't someone actually being abducted into a spaceship. It's all in their own head. They're not leaving their bed or anything. They're
Right.
always in their bed. It's all happening in their own head, right? And these things are just making people very scared and playing on stuff that they are already aware of, like sci-fi, right? To scare the crap out of people, but it's all
So it's-
psychological,
Okay, yeah.
right?
Which is interesting. Which is why, like, so can I just ask a quick question? Now you've brought that up, and I'm thinking about how demons were depicted in medieval literature and paintings and of the past.
Yeah.
Do demons not have a physical form? So whatever
No,
they,
not since the flood, right?
So whatever they take on their form is something that plays on our fears.
Mm-hmm.
So demons in the past would have taken on, like, say, our ancestors would have been more fearful of, like, animals because of prey.
Yeah.
Being,
It's like
being prey.
shapeshifters.
So that's interesting.
So they can
And a
always
lot
just
of-
whatever that you're most scared of, they'll play as that, right?
So when people
But
say,
to lure you in, they'll pretend they're a child. Like, I've seen that a bunch of times in haunted locations where people are convinced they're doing the little EKG thing with a kid, and then the moment you call it a demon, then it starts slamming things and screaming in your ear,
Right.
and it's like, oh, you figured me out, right?
I just want to I know we're going off topic, but I thought I mentioned last night at the moment we sort of finished watching the film, and you were talking about demons and how they possess people while sleeping and stuff like this. And I said to you, like, the time that we went to Union
Station in
Hotel in Nashville, which is very haunted. We kind of went.
They had the haunted floor under construction,
which is really interesting, if you ask me. So
they were redoing it. All the other floors were open,
but that one floor was closed off.
That one floor, which was the floor just above our floor,
was
closed for like whatever reason.
So naturally,
we decided to go poking around up there.
Probably not.
Because that's like what, as I've said, I was a paranormal researcher, so like I love sticking my big nose in places it doesn't belong. I was supposed to laugh that hard at my nose joke. Anyways, we went up there and
to room 711, I think it is.
Yeah, I don't know. We were like walking around one corner.
We were towards the room that is supposed to be the haunted room.
Yeah, and it was like a large banging, right? Like
it was like it wasn't really a large banging. It was like a knock, like
that's right. Yeah, that's right.
On the wall, right next to the door to the room, and it was like, and then at first we looked at each other like, what was that? There's no one up there. It's just us. And then immediately another one, but louder.
Yeah.
We did not stick around for the third one because that's like, no, that's really terrifying. Anyway, like we've just got out of there.
I was also worried that it was like an employee or something because we weren't supposed to be up there.
Right, it was really late at night, and I
highly doubt there was anyone up there, but yeah.
But what happened, at night time, and I've only just like told you this, was like I remember you were asleep, and you got woken up by noises upstairs, didn't you?
Yeah, I heard like footsteps on the like ceiling, like someone was in the like floor above us. Yeah.
Right.
Which would definitely not be the case. It was like 3 a.m. or so, you know.
Well, I remember having a very strange dream, and it was almost like a dream where I was like half awake, half asleep, and I felt something very icy cold hovering over my face, and it was like completely black, and I just remember being very scared, but then I remembered I was next to you in the bed, and then like it was like instantly pulled myself out of that state of like half awakeness, half asleep, and went back to sleep. But I remember for that few seconds, which felt, I don't know how long it was, but it felt very long. It's like a evil presence was hovering over me, and I felt like it knew where we were. Right, and it was pissed off with us because we'd gone up there and like we're almost like we were laughing about it, weren't we? We're like, oh, spooky, like playing like Scooby-Doo.
Yeah,
and
we were goofing with it.
You know, they say the ghost is meant to be a woman crying, and but obviously I don't think it is. Now that you say it's like demons take on different forms, like to gain our sympathy, or like
to gain interaction,
right? So
to get you to interact with it.
If you hear a woman crying, you're going to be more likely to go and investigate. You feel concern, and people have said that they've seen the woman, but
like, what are you going to go towards? Like a woman figure or a child figure, or like some ancient Sumerian thing, you know?
Yeah.
Reminds you of like the Mummy, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like
But I think very Nefarious is a movie that it's worth watching even if you aren't religious, you know, whether you're like agnostic or atheist even, because I think it's like a film that we need to sort of like discuss and talk about. And I just want to say the performances, the main actors were really good.
I thought it was a great movie. I thought it was a really good movie. It's not one of those that I might watch over and over again. but it was definitely worth watching. I thought the ending we should get into, obviously.
Okay, if you want to, go there.
Because, so, like, the demon wants him to
write a book.
But
he's
also
written the book, basically, for him. He wants him to just, like...
publish it.
Yeah.
But he also, I think the thing he mainly wants him to do was witness that the demon has possessed the serial killer, and then that the demon lived like after the serial killer died. Like, so he wanted to see the serial killer die, and then he wanted to see the demon afterwards. Same demon, proving that the demon also resurrected.
Says that he can't die.
Right.
Basically, he just finds another host.
So they want their own resurrection story,
right.
Like their own carpenter story, right? And he gives it to him, because he is an atheist who then he's going on like interviews with people like, of course, the awful Glenn Beck, who's the employer of Alex Stein, which we're not going to get into in this stream, but good Lord. If you fire and brimstone the earth, start with Alex Stein's show. Okay. All right. So anyways, so they like end it with him like proving that demons live, they don't die.
Yeah, they don't die. They live on.
And then he publishes the book, but he adds excerpts to it to like criticize it, but the book's still published.
Right. So he does exactly what the demon wants.
Yeah, and then at the end of the movie, the demon even shows up again to him. Like, being like, yep, gotcha.
Yeah, because
right?
he's, like, he takes possession of his body at the execution.
Yeah.
And he tries to kill himself. But that felt, like, really odd to me because, like, the gun obviously doesn't fire. And he says that, it must be God. I don't think that would be the case. I feel like that was the demon doing that, really.
Because it added to the story, so it made the story go more viral in the news because the gun didn't fire.
Right.
Right, so then the guy's there to tell the story. Like, he survived a miraculous thing, right? So it makes it even a bigger story. And then people are like, oh, well, what caused the gun not to fire, right? So it makes them talk more about it, right? So it's actually on the demon's half, like a genius move, right?
So, I mean, I don't know really if the film gives people enough, like, advice on what to do in the, like, in society now. Like, I guess it says just don't be like the atheist guy.
Yeah.
But I kind of wanted more from it in a way because I did want the atheist guy to have like a big revelation and a big awakening and to be a decent person.
Yeah, but he never did.
So
he's even a scumbag at the end selling
his
the book. The demon's book.
Yeah.
It wasn't even his book.
No.
Like, they knew the whole time that he was the perfect, like, vessel for their whole, like, little plan, right?
So what advice would you give people who are watching this and be like, oh, maybe like...
The same advice I've been giving since I started my channel. Have faith in Jesus Christ. Repent your sins. It's that simple. That's it. Just don't sin if you can. Like, try not to. If you do, repent. Like, honestly repent. Bad things you've done. And have faith in Jesus Christ. That's all you can do.
Right.
And, like, if you're ever, like, in a really bad situation, call on Michael the Archangel. Because that's, like, the greatest defender of mankind, like, against the demonic.
I would also say to people, like, look out for little symbols and stuff, like, random things that happen in your life, which you can't really sort of, put any reason to. And consider them like little blessings, and that's like helped me a lot in lots of ways. And like when, like I've always said, like when we met, it was always like deja vu, like we were like destined to meet. So I feel like people need to be more open to that sort of thing. Like, there's like if there's somebody who is a creator and is like a grand designer, and they want you to, they see that you're a good person, and be aware of like the little things that happen in your life and don't take them for granted.
Yeah, there are good angels on your side, and angels, like what they are what like translates to is messenger, right? So they'll send you, like God works by sending you messages, not like proof. It's always like a little nudge, right? Like a message is sent. That's why the good angels are messengers. That's all they ever do. They just deliver messages. They don't ever like sleep with women or create their own offspring or like any of those things. They don't teach mankind how to like make weapons, things like that, or wear makeup. These are all things the bad angels do.
That's always one that got me, was when you were like, they taught us how to wear makeup, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I guess I can see why that's a bad thing, right? Because we shouldn't be, we're so caught up on our looks and appearances now, so.
And it actually makes your like skin worse, so like you're actually prettier without makeup.
Oh, I look awful right now. But
you look great
what
without makeup.
Oh. They
and
say
that,
love
that
is
goes
blind.
for all women. Women shouldn't wear makeup. But whatever. I don't wear makeup. I look gorgeous. Okay.
Well, I think this has been an interesting discussion. I know we tried to keep it short and sweet, but
it ended up an hour long.
Yeah, but I do really think people should try and seek this movie out. I mean, it was out in theatres, and I think it did reasonably well for a movie that is obviously
not a big budget.
Not a big budget.
No big
movie.
Actors.
Yeah.
Conservative message.
But I think those movies are making a bit of a comeback in lots of ways, because people do want to see them.
The pendulum swings, and when it swings hard.
But we kind of need to also, I think really we just need to like patch things up on both sides and like work together, because you know we're not going to make any progress if we keep being divided.
Exactly, yeah.
And if you want to catch Nefarious, it's out to rent, and I think it's a good movie.
Yeah, let us know what you thought down in the comment section. Obviously, this was kind of a wild podcast tonight. We're talking a lot of like spiritual stuff, but
I hope people.
This is what this movie inspired in us. Like
this
is the type of conversation you have after watching something like Nefarious.
Yeah, even you should try and be a bit open-minded and watch these type of movies, because you know, like even if you don't agree with the messages, at least you can sort of see a different side and live, you know, a different perspective. And it always helps.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, thank you very much for joining us on this podcast, and please like and subscribe.
Please like and subscribe, everybody. Take care. Have a nice night.